Is that your voice? Is that your robotic voice? Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, listen to me. See, I'll do it again. This meeting is being recorded. Yes, this meeting is being recorded. I'm here, Chris Nielsen, with the great Bob Dabic again. I love him, and I've already been laughing more than I have all day.
Let me say, he loves me in a HR appropriate way, for the record.
Thank you for correcting the record, Bob. I appreciate that. I don't want to get in trouble myself. Yes. And, you know, we've talked about a number of things in the past, but what I wanted to talk about today is fear. And what is the best ways you've seen? I mean, you're a leader yourself. You lead leaders. You deal with leaders all the time. What is the best way you've seen leaders help their people deal with fear?
Well, Chris, it's a interesting question. It's not a great question. For you, it's good. Actually, for you, it's great. For most people, it'd just be good. So
thank you for that. Yeah.
So here's the deal with fear. One of the great books that covers fear is a book called Play to Win by Larry Wilson. It talks about self-limiting beliefs and what are known as the 4 fatal fears. And the 4 fatal fears come from the cave days, are, fear of failure, or a corollary is a need for success, fear of rejection, or a need for acceptance, fear of emotional discomfort, or a need for emotional comfort, fear of being wrong, or a need to be right. So what I do with the leaders that I coach, and to the extent they can do that with their team, is let's first identify which of those 4 fatal fears is your primary Achilles heel. And each of those fears can come up in different situations, but there's usually 1 or 2 that are kind of your go-to, if you will. So we start by, let's identify the fear. And then if I'm working with my leaders in a coaching session, I'll help them uncover the root cause or the source or origin. When did they first experience fear of failure or rejection or emotional discomfort or being wrong? So I want them to connect to typically that upbringing event or situation.
So you really take them back to childhood or wherever that came from.
I want them to identify the fear and then get to the source or origin event or situation, because then with that, Chris, they've got some power or some control over the fear. The fear never goes away, but by naming it and tracing it back to the source origin, they can then, when they start experiencing that fear, can make a choice to either hold themselves hostage by that upbringing event and that fear, or push through it. Pushing through fear is what's called courage.
Absolutely. And so to get this straight, just even naming it and knowing where it's coming from has the power to reduce it and allow you to more easily push through.
It brings you, exactly, Chris, it brings you to what I call conscious choice, right? If you don't have conscious choice, then you're just defaulting and you're going to your intuition on what you've always done when that fear comes up, which is either kind of haphazardly try to push through it or run away from it. So the idea is let's label it and then choose, because some situations the fear does serve you, right? It helps you survive on the planet. And so, but if you get conscious, you can choose to either hold yourself hostage to it or push through it.
I love that. And so what have you done with groups? Like, have you ever had the mastermind groups that you lead with Vistage feel a fear running through the room? And what do you do to minimize that fear? Or what have you seen other leaders do to minimize the fear in others?
Well, typically it works when we're processing a topic of importance. So if one of my CEO or senior executive leaders is processing a topic and we're asking clarifying questions and we're not getting at what's really holding the member back from making a decision or having a conversation or doing what they know they need to do, on the flip chart, I'll just list those 4 fatal fears with a checkbox. And I'll say, okay, group, let's start exploring with clarifying questions to this member areas that are coming up for them that touch on one of these fears. Let's see with our questions if we can help the member identify which fear is paralyzing them in this situation. So it's more on an individual basis rather than in a group setting. Because in a group setting, again, certain people are not fazed by fear of failure or fear of rejection. So it's more on an individual basis, those conversations tend to go.
And so have you had experience, or do you talk to your group about, especially in these times, when they're talking to their employees or creating an atmosphere, what are some of the best practices they can do to help keep the fear level in their companies down?
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about what's been going on currently, right? The last few months with the whole COVID situation.
Yeah.
What I've been doing with my Vistage members, and then hopefully they can translate with their groups, is first of all, let's not call the current economic state that we're in a crisis or a catastrophe. So first I want to just alter the language.
So change the language.
Change the language on what you label it. And I've come up with, I love acronyms, Chris. So here's my new acronym. It's CEOs, C-E-O-S.
Okay.
Let's call the current situation a challenge, or let's call it an event, or let's call it an opportunity, or let's call it a situation. CEOS.
I love it.
Yeah, change the labeling of a situation and it starts bringing your fear down. We also talk about when this first thing hit with COVID a few months ago, people were grieving loss, grieving the way things used to be.
Yeah.
And there are stages of grief, and the simplest model I like are the 5 stages. You're either in denial that the current loss is occurring, right? You're either in anger, or you're bargaining to get back to normal any which way you can, or you're in some form of depression, not necessarily clinical, but just some form of sadness or depression. Then finally acceptance. And it's not linear. One day you could be at acceptance, you hear a little bit of bad news, you're back to anger or bargaining or depression. So I have them, first of all, let's change what we call the situation so it's more neutral by labeling it.
Yeah.
Let's determine which phase of the stages of grief we're in. You know, which stage are we in? And again, if you say, oh, wow, I'm back in anger, or I'm in denial that this is even real. It's like, see, so the more they can get their mindset to acceptance, acceptance is where you can be calm, neutral, you reduce the fear, and then you can focus on what you need to do.
And
so we touch on the fears, we touch on the labeling, and we touch on the stage of grief.
I love that. And, you know, I haven't seen it. No wonder people call you brilliant.
Well, I know I do, and a lot of people get irritated with that, but I think that's their problem.
Yeah, I don't judge you for calling yourself brilliant, except for that I think you're right, actually. I've worked with a lot of facilitators, and your insight into that and the way you look at it, I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah, I've actually created, when this came out, I had a speaker presentation gig for Vistage for a couple of Colorado Vistage groups. It was going to become virtual, and I was going to talk about my typical leadership topic, and the timing wasn't right for that. They needed something more immediate, so I've actually created a whole PowerPoint presentation called Intentionally Connected Leadership, and it's about intentionally connecting to what mindset will serve you. And the whole idea is, let's choose a mindset that will serve you to deal with the current situation. And one of the sayings I love is, your mind is a terrible neighborhood to go into alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The things we make up, the horrific stories, are what one speaker, Heather Anderson, in our Vistage community calls awfulizing. Right? You hear a little bit of bad news, and all of a sudden you're going to be out of a job, lose all your money, be on the streets, and then be dead. In nanoseconds, right? Awfulizing.
Yeah.
So let's change the mindset to service. And again, you've got to be able to figure out stage of grief, which fear you're in. Oh, the other thing on this whole topic is there's 3 circles, Chris, that we consume ourselves with our thoughts. There's the big circle called the circle of concern, stuff outside our control, where we spend a lot of time worrying about stuff we cannot do anything about.
Yes, we do. Now you're getting into more brilliance, aren't you here?
Well, all I'm doing is sharing what I've learned. This doesn't come, I didn't invent any of this. Then there's a smaller circle called circle of influence. Things we can influence, but again, don't necessarily have control over. And then there's a really small circle in the center called the circle of control. Mm-hmm. And the only thing we really have control over, Chris, especially these days, or really in any situation where fear comes up, is our mindset.
Right.
How are we viewing the situation? What thoughts or stories are we making up? And I just ask my leaders, like, is the story you're making up about the current situation, whatever it is, helping you or hurting you?
Now that's a great question right there, helping or hurting. And we could use that in a lot of the things we do. And especially, again, if you focus on control. And I love what you talked about in terms of identifying what fear, becoming aware of that. And then you got a choice. Do I go with this fear, or do I, go through this fear, or do I rise above this fear, whatever it is? And then I love actually looking at the phases of grief that you talked about to know where you're at in this. And then you can take all that and actually apply it to your people. And one of the things I've seen that's worked is really clear communication with the people. And Disneyland kind of gave me an example. They constantly use the dark to create fear and unknown. And I think we're experiencing, a lot of people are in the dark. And when you're in the dark, you fill in the blank.
Yep.
And most people are filling in the blank with negative things.
It's all made up. It's all made up between the ears. So it just, be careful what your mindset is. So yeah, it's crazy the stuff we make up.
So one of the things I get is, obviously, for a leader to be, if you went in front of your organization and said, we're going to handle this just fine. I've got this under control. You're going to freak people out. So obviously it's getting yourself centered first.
Yeah. So, back to the people and when they're dealing with fear, one of the things that my leaders are coached on regularly by me is the magical acronym called LOVE, L-U-V. So when someone's distraught, they're tense, they're anxious, they're fearful, spend some time really listening to what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Ask some questions. The U is understand. Ask some questions to truly understand their thoughts and feelings. And then the V is the magical one. It's called validate.
Yeah.
Validate or paraphrase. It's like, wow, sounds like you're really concerned about this, or you're really worried, or you're really fearful about that. Tell me more. Wow, I get it. I from your perception and from your perspective, I can get why this has got you so caught up in anxiety or fear. I get it. I understand. I feel your pain. Again, it's magical. And by just understanding and validating another person's point of view with intense listening, it brings their fear down. It's like, somebody gets me. There's no magical solution, but you can give the gift of love, listening, understanding, and validating.
Well, I think that is a magical solution, because so many people don't get listened to. They're definitely not understood, and they don't.
I'm sorry, what'd you just say?
Where they're at.
I'm sorry, what'd you just say? I wasn't listening. Stupid joke. I have to do it every time.
I knew you had to do it. Your love solution, actually, have you ever seen it or done it yourself in front of a big group of people that are, feeling that anxiety?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. So it's like, look, and one of the things that I coach my leaders on, especially when this thing hit a few months ago, is when you address your team, start off by, we have a great speaker, James Newton, he says, touch people in their emotional experience. So you first got to say, hey staff, look, I get it. Some of you are probably feeling some anxiety, fear, frustration, maybe even some anger over what's been happening. I get it. I understand. I don't blame you. And here's what we're going to do about it. So you spend just 30 seconds, a minute, getting into someone's thoughts and feelings to understand and validate where you think they're coming from. And the beauty of this is, Chris, even if your validation is off, you say, wow, it sounds like you're really feeling anxious. They go, no, it's not anxious. It's more frustration. It's like, oh, okay, I get it now. Your attempt at understanding and validating them, you get credit for. And even if you guess wrong, the fact that you're trying, they appreciate, and they'll correct you. So again, it's Stephen Covey. Seek to understand another person's point of view and then be understood. Get in their world first and validate their world. Don't have to agree with it. Just validate it, then you can make your point.
No, that is powerful. That's incredibly powerful to do that for people. And what I see there is then I think the next step is what you hinted at already, is once you've touched on where they're feeling emotionally, so they feel like that you understand them. It's then sharing what the plan is going forward.
Yeah.
And
so they got to start though. And again, it's tough for leaders to get in this emotional place, but let's start with connecting with people emotionally. then they're ready. Once they feel fully nurtured and understood, you know, the analogy I think I've used with you before is when you listen, understand, and validate someone's point of view, it's like giving them a hot fudge sundae. You ready for this analogy, Chris?
Yeah, give it to me again because I enjoyed it the last time.
It's one of my favorites, okay?
Yeah.
It's when you listen, understand, and validate another person's point of view, you give them the ice cream, the fudge, the whipped cream, and the nuts.
Yeah.
The cherry, that real sweet cherry, is called your agreement. You may not agree with their point of view. You may withhold the cherry, but if they've got the ice cream, fudge, whipped cream, and nuts, their tummy's pretty full. And when their tummy's full and they feel connected to emotionally, they're now ready for your logical plan going forward.
I love it, and it bears repeating multiple times. I think it's such a great example. And I feel it too. You know, I've said it with my girlfriend. I said, I don't feel you understand me. She says, you don't want understanding. You want me to do what you're asking. And I said, no, I really would be good if you just got what I was saying and then told me no and I knew you got it. And she said, no. You just want me to do what you're asking.
Yeah. And for the record, for everybody that may be listening to this podcast, I think Chris has got an audience of 2 or 3, including his mom and dad. When he says girlfriend,
they don't watch.
Yeah. He means girlfriend in quote marks, okay? Just so we're crystal clear. Wink, wink. Yeah, girlfriend.
That's absolutely right. I've got an incredible imagination.
Hey, Chris, these magazine cutouts do not count as a girlfriend. I've told you that before.
Thank you for sharing that again, Bob. What I wanted to touch on just quickly is that we'll ask you the question. In this time, what have you done for yourself to make that you're running, you're not dipping into fear, or if you do, what do you do for yourself?
So you know what, Chris, it's interesting. I'm a strong believer in affirmations, which are real simple mindset mantras, right? It starts with I am. I am, present tense, not wanna be or will be, no, I am. And what gets me centered when I get anxious or triggered or fearful is, you know, I am grateful, respectful, acceptful, right? Not a real word, but it's.
I like it. I like that you make up words.
Yeah. Grateful. Don't interrupt me when I'm saying my affirmation, Chris. Okay. It throws everything off. Okay, I'm better now. I was triggered. Now I'm better. I'm grateful, respectful, acceptful, healthful, and committed to do my best. Can't control the outcome, but I can be committed in the moment, in the present, to doing my very best. The outcome will be what it is. So that's my mantra. I start my morning before I get out of bed with it. At any point in the day, if I'm triggered, I go to that. Just take a deep breath, close my eyes, go to my peaceful place, which is a hammock between 2 palm trees in Hawaii Beach. And I just say that mantra. And before I go to sleep at night, along with my prayers, again, I say that affirmation. So it's continual programming to keep what's going on between the ears as focused as possible.
Those are some powerful programming words, especially like your made-up word, acceptful. I think when you accept what is, it gives you better to deal and change the next moment if you can. But this arguing with the moment has brought so much misery to me, and I've seen it bring misery to other leaders as well.
Chris, people spend so much time in that circle of concern, stuff they have no control over. Then they move to influence, and they try to, they're trying to influence. Give your best shot at influencing someone or some situation, but at some point realize that, okay, influence is not the be-all, end-all. Then go to control, which is control your attitude or mindset. It's
powerful. I mean, what would you say then from that? I think the people that spend their time out in the circle that they can't control, and then the amount of time they spend in influence, to the amount of time they spend here, I'd say for most people, this is a very small amount of time.
Exactly. And that's what that mantra or affirmation does. It gets you centered and focused to focus on what you can do in the present moment that is totally within your control, which is choosing a mindset and a behavior that you can do and will do.
So what a way to start your day to do the best you can to control. What was the one on control again? What was yours on that? Your last statement on the.
And committed to do my best. And I'm committed to do my best.
I love that. I'm committed to do my best.
Because see the other thing, you either can be committed to doing your best or being attached, ego attached to an outcome you have no control over. And when we get fused or ego attached to an outcome we have no control over, we get tense, we get anxious, we get fearful. We're not in our present most powerful state of mind. So let go of the outcome, have a goal, have an outcome you're shooting for, but come back to the present and focus on behaviors that are within your control that'll hopefully make the outcome occur. But let's not get overly consumed with the outcome. If I don't hit that outcome, I'll be less than.
How did
Attachment is not healthy. Commitment is.
I think that's incredible statement right there, because I've seen it work in my life too, how miserable I've been when I've been attached to this thing and I see it going the wrong way and I get more and more miserable about it because I don't see it working. And then I make everyone's life around me miserable about it too.
Exactly. And it does you no good, and it just consumes a lot of emotional, mental, and spiritual energy. And physical energy for that matter.
How did you get to that? Because so many of us have the habit of working on the stuff we can't control, the influence, and not spending the time working on ourselves. How did you get to that point?
Again, lots of reading, doing my own kind of personal and professional developmental work, just being really aware of what's got me out of sorts right now. Something from my past. Let me get connected there. Is it some fear that's occurring now? What am I attached to? So it's just having, with awareness, mental awareness comes choice. So it's being self-aware. What am I thinking about? And is that thinking helping or hurting? Is it helping or hurting? Just that simple.
Helping or hurting. I think that's incredibly powerful. And what last question I'll give you before let you go back to your more important stuff.
Please, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I love your beginning and end of the day, the affirmations that get you kind of really, what a positive way to start it, to get in that, to what you can commit to.
Yep.
And what is the thing if you're triggered during the day? What is your process then?
Well, again, if someone on the other end of this Zoom call was listening, I'll repeat it again. So here we go. You ready, Chris?
I'm ready.
I take a deep breath, close my eyes, exhale. And we had a speaker, Stephen Snyder, years ago, says, look, most people aren't going to do 20 to 30 minutes meditation a day, but you can do 20-second meditations. So the way this works is you deep breath in, close your eyes, and again, I just go to that peaceful place, which is on a hammock between two palm trees in the shade on a Hawaii beach. And then I just go to that mantra, I'm grateful, respectful, acceptful, helpful, and committed to do my best. And then I visualize how the next hour or the morning or the afternoon is going to go. I actually visualize it going perfectly the way I ideally want it. So it's a visualization exercise, and that gets me recentered and focused virtually every time.
So for you, a little trigger, all you have to do is a deep breath, go to a happy place, go to your mantra, and you are putting yourself in a position to handle that moment much better.
Close your eye, deep breath in, exhale, go to your peaceful place. For some people, it's the mountains, the beach, wherever it is. Get focused, repeat your mantra, your affirmation, and then visualize how you want the next phone call, meeting, conversation, whatever it is to go. Just visualize it. Like any athlete visualizes what they're going to do to be successful in the sport.
I love it. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Again, I appreciate it. Would love to even see your full presentation sometime. And
I'd be happy to do the whole intentionally connected leadership PowerPoint for you, Chris. Just let me know.
Yeah, you are awesome. I love you.
Thanks so much. And again, good luck with your girlfriend.
Thank you. Thank you for getting me to laugh. I know you care so much about me, Bob. You'll do anything to boost my immune system.
Take care, Chris.